I wrote my story as insomnia pages, like they were diary entries. And it was because I was having night terrors and I was having all of this PTSD at the time. I wanted it out of my head. I never wrote a book. Like I didn't sit down for the first one. Like now I've written 15, but like some of them intentionally. This one I did not intentionally write, my very first one. So I was still a baby at the time. But Model Stop Traffic started out as dreams and night terrors and feelings, and nonprofits and the FBI and DEA actually, between the reality of my world and what I was remembering through like all the PTSD, they were like sitting with me, not all together, but I had like a psychologist and like come to me and be like, hey, do you want to put that together and make it like your story? That could be your story.
Let's go.
Good afternoon and welcome to AU Studios. We have in the studio with us this afternoon Miss Air Kramer, the president of the Brickell Chamber, Community Chamber, I stand corrected, and our very own Laura Rojas. Today we will be talking about human trafficking. And this is a very important, I know to some touchy subject. And so without further ado, we will allow each of us to just kind of say a little something about ourselves, and we'll start with our guest, Ms. Kramer, for sure. Air, how are you? And thank you so much for thinking enough of us that you would come out and that you would share with us covering such an important topic and your own experience as it relates to this topic. So I give you the floor.
Well, thank you definitely for having me. It is an honor when I get to talk about this. As you guys know already, this is a very important subject for me, especially here in Florida, being the president of the Brickell Community Chamber, and then just being a woman, because I know we just wrapped up Women's History Month.
Yes.
So it's an absolute honor to be here.
Good deal. And so definitely we can't move forward without Laura. You chime
Yes,
in.
well, I'm really glad to have you here because I know this is something that we hear a lot on the news. Maybe we have heard about someone talking about it, but we don't really know. It's like a very distant subject. That's the way I feel it. So I would like to get deep on it in some of the facts, maybe, because I know Florida is like a major player in this area.
Major player, to say the least. Yes,
exactly.
Top 3, as a matter of fact.
Well, that's crazy. It's not a big shock. It's not a huge surprise, but it's concerning. So one of the facts that I have here that I would like to discuss is like, I have, for instance, here that it affects, like human trafficking is a global crime, of course, and it affects an estimated of 27.6 million people worldwide. I mean, like that's insane. It's a huge amount of people, and mainly women. I mean, like regarding your experience, I mean, like how do you feel these facts? I mean, like are correct, or what do you think about it?
That correct word is what I'm going to linger on, is 27 million, and that's global. We got to remember globally, not just the United States, but that's reported. And if you actually connect it, and I'm going to connect it to some U.S. stats here, is they say just for women reporting like rape or domestic violence, it's 1 in 5. So do the math on like a global scale. In the United States, as women, we have a lot more rights to actually speak up about what's going on in our lives. So when I look at 27 million, I'm thinking, okay, these are the women or children or even males, because it can happen to every gender, every age, any ethnicity, any background, and we can get into that later. But also just the fact that, like, these are the people that they were able to save, rescue, get out, and also reported. So I'm willing to say it's probably 3 times that number, if not 5. So,
Oh my. Wow.
Yeah.
3 to 5 times the 27 million, and that's because of just reporting, right?
I would think reporting, because go to domestic
lack
violence
of
in the
reporting.
U.S., that's
comparison is
1 in 5
exactly.
women will say if they were assaulted. Okay, we're more outspoken. I've got to give a little bit more of a gradient, but if you go somewhere where they don't have as many rights, let's talk about Malaysia or going into more of the upper Asian countries, maybe even Czechoslovakia, Prague, those type of countries don't have the same type of women's rights that we do.
Yes, yes.
And so keeping along the line, so based on those facts, I'm looking at some of the same info in terms of facts. It says women and girls make up 71% of all trafficking victims, while children represent nearly 1 in 3 victims globally. Which is kind of in keeping, with what we're talking about. But I'm also learning that there are 2 types of human trafficking. Sex trafficking and labor trafficking. Okay. And so when we talk about this 27 million, right, and then women making up 77%, I'm finding it safe to assume that it's that those numbers are divided between the 2, sex trafficking and labor trafficking.
So I'm going to back up a little bit because there's actually 5 different types of human trafficking. So when you break it down, you do have sex trafficking, also known as sex slavery or modern day slavery. So we got number 1 here. Child trafficking is anyone under 18, and that can encompass any type of trafficking, but it just means that you're a child. Then you get into domestic servitude trafficking, which happens more in like Asia or in Latin America countries where if you even go biblical, it's like they maybe had a debt to a family, but that debt can never actually be paid off. So like they are in this like stuck situation. You get into organ trafficking, which a lot of people don't think of, but places that are huge hubs like Miami, New York City, LA, it's very much a problem. Like you go in a back alley as a male, as a female, and find yourself in a horrible situation. And then finally, labor trafficking or domestic trafficking. That could be something like someone being promised a job. Again, coming back to Miami, we have a huge influx of the Latin culture coming for work and second chances or maybe 15th chances, depending on where they're at in life. And I'm talking about myself too. It's like, no matter where I'm at. So, and they get promised to be a flight attendant when they get here, and they get this stipend of, let's say, $10K. Again, it's impossible to pay off because of whatever tariff or rules. And now they have the visa information. It just becomes a huge mess. But I don't know if your facts tell you what counts as human trafficking.
Of course not.
There's 3 things that count.
And I wanted to jump a little bit into that because I would like to know, I mean, like there are so many things that we don't know about this. What do you think are the main like misunderstood areas of this huge problem that you are just describing the tip of the iceberg? I mean, like, what do you think we misunderstood the most about this human trafficking?
So a lot of people don't know what counts as human trafficking. So when my experience happened, it was almost 15 years ago. I got to be the unfortunate pioneer poster child, where back 15 years ago they thought that human trafficking only happened in third world countries or it happened to other races. It didn't happen to my type of like background in history. If you're not watching the visual, I am a tall, lanky, 5'10" blonde chick. So there's my visual right there. And so I look like Barbie, to be honest with you, but that's a whole different story. But there's actually just 3 things that go down to being what is human trafficking. And it's not prostitution. It's not third world. It's 3 things. You either have to fall into force, coercion, or fraud. And if you want, we can go through those together, and I can even play with you because this is one of the games that I tend to teach people about.
Well, what we'd like to know is, and you kind of alluded to it some, just your experience. So where do you fall in this whole world of human trafficking? And I don't, we don't have to go long. I don't want you to get, into areas where you're not comfortable, but just in terms of what would you like to say to educate us and to inform us as it relates to your own personal experience?
This is where having a lot of healing, like intense healing, and now just being so far removed, what I would be called now is a thriver. So I'm doing great. I'm a CEO of a company, a president of a different one. Like mentally, emotionally, you never feel completely renewed, but that scar becomes beautiful. And so
Awesome.
with that, it was 15 years ago. It's very publicly known. It's a callous type of story for me because I get on stages and do this a lot now. But I'm one of these survivors from the modeling industry when it comes to human trafficking through modeling houses, where fraud and force was actually part of the problem. Going back to those 3 things that count to being human trafficking. And so 15 years ago, or even all the way like younger, I was living in model houses throughout not just this country, but several countries through the modeling industry. So just for today, I'm just going to keep those industries a little bit private of who I was working for, but they are household names in the modeling world. And there was a book for that, right?
Yes.
So
Yes. You'll tell us a little about that before we
I'm
close
going to
out.
tell you guys, buy the book.
Yes.
But what I can say was it was a 9-month experience from what's called grooming to taken to rescue. And I was very, very grateful where I was definitely meant to be rescued or definitely meant to escape, get out of it. But the way it happened, it's one of those things that just had to be God. It couldn't have been, you know, better planned because it wasn't like they were looking for me. So that's another kind of, I feel like a cliffhanger is what I'm doing to you guys. But,
We're on the edge here more and more.
Oh my God.
But more importantly, what I have learned throughout the years is what happens whenever you're able to go back into the system of human trafficking and interrupt it through conversations on what we're having right now. Is clearing it up, trying to figure out, okay, what counts as human trafficking? Why is it so prevalent in Florida? My story is just one of literally 27 million times 3 to 5. So I can share my story all day long. I could say, go buy the book, go listen to this or XYZ. But at the end of the day, it's more about the parameters that lead you to maybe fall into this or to not be able to detect it in your country, your city.
And we'll 2 things. We're going to talk about some of the detection. We're going to definitely have you close out and tell us a little about the book, the cliffhanger. Tell us a little about.
I didn't mean to do that actually. I'm just like,
it was natural.
That's perfect. But that's perfect. That's a businesswoman. That's perfect.
I've gotten good at my job.
Really good.
And so we've talked about some facts as it relates to human trafficking. We've heard a little about your experience as it relates to human trafficking. Signs, right? Potential signs
you
of
mentioned
human trafficking. What are some of the signs that I don't know? I guess you could say someone like myself who, a laywoman, right? Oh God, I don't know if that sounds right.
I'm over here like I'm talking myself.
You know how they say layman's terms? But I love these podcasts. I love just the realness. But for a regular average person, like what's happening that will cause me to see and notice and be like, hey, that's human trafficking, or that person is probably being exploited or being trafficked. What are some signs? Like what should happen and could happen that would cause me to have that thought or that idea?
So you're probably the least average person I know, just to start that off. As far as you're like, I'm the average person. Like, no, you're actually very good at picking up on details. And so this actually makes you great at being someone be preventative for this or even trying to help somebody get rescued. There is some obvious kind of looks and then there's some very subtle cues. I am somebody that if you just think it could be happening and you're in public somewhere, airport, the mall, XYZ, even the bus, you just go ahead and say something. You're like, what's the worst thing if you're like, you tell an authority, like, that just looks a little bit weird to me. Like, I'd rather go home saying that versus like being haunted for the next
doing
anything. Thinking I didn't do anything in
2 weeks, 3 months.
Totally understand. Absolutely.
So I'm gonna start it there of like, if you just feel wrong in your bones.
It probably is.
Something's probably wrong, right? You guys, especially as women, I definitely believe we have this inside intuition when it comes to other women, especially. Like we just have this, I think, baseline of empathy of like, something doesn't feel right in her soul, right? So, but to get very tactile, right? Because I know we're gonna have some male listeners on here. We better, because we need men in this.
Yeah.
So with that, there is a couple of movements out there that if somebody is educated in human trafficking or experience it, they may be able to communicate with you. A few of those would be having any type of form of red X on like the palm of a hand or a wrist. If you see anything, I'm lifting my wrist and my hands up, that looks like a barcode near those areas, or just random numbers, random letters. Branding is very prominent amongst domestic labor trafficking and even sex slavery, especially with children, because part of your identity needs to be fragmented or broken, almost like breaking a horse, like a wild horse. You're going to break the person. And part of that is taking away your identity, taking away your name, for instance, and making you a number. So some physical signs there. The red X will probably come from the victim themselves, because they may have heard it like on television once or on a milk carton. I'm showing my age now. Like somehow they've been educated by that. Versus,
and so they'll put the red X to notify someone.
Yeah, like maybe in ketchup, they'll they'll be out and about. They'll find lipstick.
Got it.
Something that just like lets you be like, what is that? Like, every woman has lipstick, especially in something like sex slavery. It's very popular to have even a nice lipstick. Like something super fancy that you see like Dior, or you see, Prada, Chanel, like those higher brands do not disclose the fact that she could still be human trafficked, or that this could be wrong. Like having wealth makes sense when it comes from the most prominent, illegal, white-collar crime of the entire planet. And so just because she, has fancy merchandise on her doesn't mean it can't be happening to her.
Yeah.
A little bit of a tangent there. But lesser signs would be she doesn't hold her own license, or this person doesn't have their own travel documents. I don't know about you, but play with me for a second. Let's say you and me are going to the airport. I may hand you my passport for just like half a second. But how often do you need to have your passport or your license going through the airport? They check it 3 or 4 times. Now, if I'm with somebody else and you're just like, probably not my husband, we don't have any children, actually there's 2 or 3 girls with him or her, and one person's holding everything, and just like has that authority, that power. That's a little bit of an off thing for me. I've been to 62 different countries, and I know for a fact my passport, my travel documents, they check them 4 or 5 times, and they want me to be holding it. So TSA and different professionals, they've been taught to look out for that.
I have to tell you now I have to tell you, absolutely. I can think about if I am in an airport and I see whether it's a guy or girl, right, with women, right, and I saw that one person, fielding out the passport and the IDs and collecting them, immediately I know. I don't know what it is. I don't know that human trafficking would necessarily come to my mind. First thing I'd probably think about is a pimp or prostitution, right? For me, because that scenario would totally not be something that you'd expect to see. You just called it. You're an adult. You're traveling. How likely is it that you are handing back and forth someone else your credentials as you go throughout the airport? Like, that makes no sense for adults. If it's my, 13-year-old son or daughter or that's a different story. Yeah, of course you better collect it, because this kid is going to lose it, right? But yes, Era, totally. I would immediately, again, I wouldn't necessarily suspect human trafficking, and after today, that is now at the top of my thoughts. If I see something strange, not just prostitution or not just a pimp or not just abuse, but that now is on my radar. Yes.
And we talk regarding like the behavior of the person who's being a victim of human trafficking. What would you say is like signs that can help you identify that he or she may be in a situation where she may not be able to, mark the X or something, but her behavior or his behavior can tell us that something is going on.
Wow.
So this is where we can get into more Miami culture as well, and children, kind of the teenage type of children in this case, is dramatic switches in personalities. But when you're a teenager, that can happen daily. Like, I've been there. But I also would say look for dramatic differences in appearance.
Okay.
So if you go and you look at my story, something that I saw as a red flag that I didn't realize until hindsight 2020, and actually years later, that they immediately wanted to give us all makeovers. Now in the modeling or the acting or entertainment industries, changing your hair or changing your look every 3 months is like, how are we keeping the new, right? Or how are you keeping Miami?
Yeah.
So what they did was actually very strategic by going into the modeling industry. But dramatic differences in appearances for, let's say, a teenage girl going to a school in Hialeah, she may immediately start receiving like that beautiful Tory Burch bag or the Christian Louis, or she may have, you know, got her hair extensions in and like she's glowing. She looks great on the outside and she looks great like that for about 3 to 5 months because that is a grooming stage is they shower with love. And this goes a little bit into what you were calling pimps. We don't call them pimps anymore. I'm sorry.
Telling my age now.
We don't call them pimps anymore. Okay, it's your turn next.
You gotta tell your age.
Milk cartons, and she's talking about pimps. So clearly, we need to just go to one of those other. Okay, never mind. I'm not going to go there. Mine went elsewhere. So, nonetheless, a dramatic difference in personality. She may have a new boyfriend. He may have a new girlfriend. He may have a new boyfriend. Like, there's so many different things that could be kind of spotlights for pun of Atlantis right here that you're like, hey, that was just so fast. And even teenage jobs in Miami, like they're getting $10 an hour, $13 an hour. Like they're not able to go and afford those shoes that took me until I was 27. Right? So like how'd she get them? And you know, the parents type of situation, especially with being a teacher or being someone that's in, around children more often, in a church perhaps. You may be able to pick up on that of like, okay, I'm happy you have these items, and that's how I kind of approach it with some of these children. I was like, that's a gorgeous bag. I was like, can you tell me the story of that bag? And it's kind of that like choke up type of feeling because they want to share. They're like, obviously it makes them feel validated, and people should feel validated and valued. And so with that, it's like, try to inquire on like that dramatic switch. It could be the personality, it could be appearance, and then a lot of relationships will start to happen. So a shift in actual dynamics of circles. Okay. So this is psychology or psychotherapy, and this is what my master's and doctorates, clinical counseling. Dr. Maya knows that. You don't. So I'm going to share that with you in the audience. But when you switch your social circles, you're either elevating or you're devaluing yourself, right? Like you always want to be the dumbest person at the table because that means you're growing, is what my mother would always say, is like, okay, go change your table. Well, if someone's table has changed recently and you see them financially growing, or you see them growing up fast, suddenly they're interested in, sex or, like looking sexy, like that Miami girl. And they're 12, but I swear they look like they're 28, right? And like, I love what you're wearing, but my girl. So with that, they'll switch friend groups very quickly in like 3 to 5 months. And as a parent, as a mother, as a father, uncle, you can actually look at that child and be like, okay, this was your friend group a few months ago. Now your friend group is dramatically switched. I also see you changing your appearance. And it's kind of like that, are you discovering who you are stage, in which a parent's responsibility is to kind of navigate while letting them have that self-exploration, or have you found yourself targeted? Because they never choose it. Nobody chooses to want to go down this path. And so have you found yourself maybe targeted, or perhaps just in the wrong group of friends right now? And that's hard for a parent. I'll be honest with you. I'm not a parent now, but I can only imagine trying to detect that for your child on an ongoing basis.
Because now that you mentioned you being targeted, I mean, like, is there like a, I don't know, like a profile, or we could say like traits of a personality or a situation that a person may have that can make her or him a target for this type of crime?
Definitely. That's probably my favorite question so far. So to me, she's like, point for me. So targeted. So a lot of victims of human trafficking do not know who they are yet. And I'm not saying that that's their fault. It is your responsibility throughout your life to figure out who you are, what you stand for, and what your value is. But when you're younger, especially growing up in the 90s or the early 2000s, there was a lot of pressure on who you were. Like, what do you look like? I remember, like, the Reese Witherspoon, Legally Blonde, of, like, that story arc of who is she? What is she made of type of thing. But that meekness, that uncertainty, that figuring out what my value is internally, not externally. Like, knowing that I'm gorgeous because I'm divinely created versus, you know, this guy that I'm just, like, so crushing over, you know, telling me that. That's a different feeling. So human traffickers will come in, and they'll come in as what's called Romeos, which would be that good-looking guy that gives you everything that you feel like you're missing in life and showers you with gifts and love and attention, and will target you as if you are, you know, the girl of his dreams. And that was like a documentary a few years ago of, like, Mr. Tinder, or, you know.
Yes, I saw something like that. This guy that he was like
it was
a
scamming
con
out of,
artist.
con artist. So I
yes.
get that kind of visual of, like, it is a con, and that's the coercion part of human trafficking. Young girls that you maybe don't have the attention elsewhere. And I'm not going to blame the family or anything like that, because that's not theirs to hold. But they feel like it's missing. So they're now receiving this. Like, that's an easy way for them to get in. Another way is, again, we're in Miami. We're in South Florida. And a lot of people come here from different countries. And they don't have the money, right? That's why they're coming for the American dream. And I still believe in the American dream, right?
Yes, we all do.
So with that, they come over and they find themselves in debt of, like, $20K to this agency, this, you know, tourist agency or a visa agency, and it wasn't actually a visa agency. It was a human trafficking ring, but they have that type of money to be able to, you know, support some loans and be their own bank. And a lot of white-collar crime can get connected back to banking systems and to politics, to where, like, you just really have to watch out for scam companies or shell companies when it comes to these things.
And so the perfect Laura asked, you know, what are some of the you know, what are some of the signs, right? Or what do traffickers look for? And so in looking at some of the information based even on the DEA site, poverty, right? You talked about that, someone not having enough money, lack of education, or unstable family situations. And as you said, it's not, you know, the family's fault that a trafficker or someone is coming to exploit their child, or, you know, their daughter, their son. And one of the other facts I want to touch on really quick, and we didn't, and I'm just going to put this out there. Human trafficking is a $150 billion industry. OMG. $150 billion industry. Incredible. So I know that we are tight on time. You've got to get out the door. So one of the last things I guess we can kind of close out on before you kind of touch on the book, paths to healing, or suggestions or recommendations for resources that may be, not maybe, that are available for victims or survivors and even thrivers.
Thrivers, I love it. Yes. So, what a loaded question. I can take it though. She's like, bring it on. So, first and foremost, going back to that currency, that amount, white collar crime, it's the number one white collar crime in the entire planet. Wow. And I'm a little bit different than other activists. Maybe I've just been doing this too long that I've become more direct over the years of, it's not going anywhere. Like, I'm very honest. Like, human trafficking has been here from, if we just go based off of the Bible, you can go and look at a different, you know, the Torah, whatever you have, that's your ancient text of choice. It's been around forever. And it's been, you know, 3,000 years, you know, maybe 7,000 years, depending on what you believe in, right? With that, can we interrupt the cycle? 100%. Can we, like, try to figure out different paths and, like, detect it? Yes. But to actually eradicate it would take a global effort. And it's going to take, I don't see it happening in our lifetime. And I don't mean to be negative. I'm just being very direct.
I get you. You say it'll take a global, can we interrupt it? It'll take a global effort. Can we interrupt it? Yes. Can we prohibit it or stop it? No. I'm certainly with you, and this may sound selfish, this may sound cruel. I don't have to tell any of you at the table, I'm a businesswoman. From a global standpoint, would we be willing to interrupt such a revenue generating industry? Like, we live in such a cruel country that is a real question. And that's the reality. No one is going to F up their money because we have a heart or our heartstring has been tugged, because we don't want to have women or young girls or young boys trafficked, abused, right? I'm floored. Like, I'm floored. 27 million, or even 5 times that, but you still get to 150 billion, right? And hell, if you say 27 million, that's an underestimate, right? That 150, right? Because just like the numbers may not be accurately reported, revenue is stemming from what's being reported.
Exactly.
Revenue is stemming from what's being reported. If you think about it, if we're underreporting, 3 to 5 times, revenue then is 3 to 5 times more than that.
Yes, you're right.
Unbelievable.
I'm going to go a step further. I'm pushing it. I don't get to normally go this dark. People tend to stop me, want to sugarcoat it, but I'm like, okay, we're going to be deep. This also goes to who can actually afford to buy a human being.
Yeah.
I don't know a lot of people that if I told you, hey, if you have $100,000 right now, you can buy that very beautiful 15-year-old girl.
Wow.
Like, how many people can do that, right? So if that's the case, then think about the people that could do that. Those tend to be people that are CEOs of companies, or they're in, some type of higher career status to be able to have that type of money to spend. Now, perhaps they're doing it in smaller doses, like 10,000 here, 10,000 here, and renting the individual versus buying them outright, which may occur in somewhere like Asia or different, more impoverished areas of the United States. But if those are the people that are actually able to buy the product, which we're being honest, this is a product of being a property.
Service industry and a product, yes.
With this, you got to be like, okay, these are also people making our laws. These are also the people that own the restaurants that everyone else goes to.
That probably sit in the same table.
The celebrities. So those are people in power. Why would they want to change the system to where they're not in power?
That part. That's what I'm talking about. Why would we want, particularly those folk, right? The ones in power, the ones that are making decisions, the ones that are generating, right, driving revenue in the market. Why would they want to interrupt a good thing? All right, and so on that, wow, this has been amazing. Let me just say this. From this point moving forward, human trafficking is certainly at the forefront of my mind. When I look at things now, it's not just going to be about prostitutes. It's going to be, and I'm being facetious a little,
prostitution
but
can be a
that's
choice.
the first thing that
and we don't call it prostitution anymore. We call it sex work.
Sex work, right?
Pimp,
But
prostitution.
pimp, prostitution. But
you know.
that's something that. But now, and I certainly don't mean to make light of either of that, any of that. However, that's on my radar. That's on my radar. The X, the numbers, the looking at the behavior, the swift change, the hot bag, the red bottoms. Yeah, maybe just like you said, the story. Tell me about documents, and maybe kind of like what you said. I travel a lot. Winters I don't. I travel a lot, and so I have an opportunity to see that all day, every day, right?
You also live in a tourist place,
and a very
so you don't have to travel.
Yeah,
in your case, you just need to walk to the store and see who has all the licenses.
Yeah.
Yes, totally.
So we live in Miami, so.
And so this is awesome.
Well, because to end, because we are in a dark, deep area of but I would like to, I don't know, if a person is being a victim, if she or he is in the middle of the situation, I don't know if they have access to information that I could tell you, like, what should they do? What would be the approach? I don't even know if they have the access, but what do you think it could be something they could do if they get involved in the middle of this situation? I mean, like, what's the best way for a person to stay at least mentally strong to support and be able to eventually, be rescued, something like that.
So this is a deep psychology question, and it's not a beautiful answer, but it's going to be an authentic answer.
Okay.
Of it is a certain mindset. And this is something that I've got to learn about myself through this experience. And I've been able to hold it into anything that I've done ever since, which is probably what pushed me to be who I am today. But there's a flip in the switch, for a pun in there, or your mindset has to just lock in, is how to say it more directly, where do you want to survive this? Is your life actually worth it? And that is the flip of validation. So I've been in those dark spaces, those literal dark spaces and those mental dark spaces of, do I actually care if I live another day? Because if I do care, then I've got to do whatever I need to do in this moment, like a Navy SEAL, to get to that next moment. It is a challenge between, can they break you, being the traffickers or whoever's exploiting you, versus are you breakable? Now, some victims are breakable. And I think that we didn't get to talk about this, but several. The average lifespan of a human trafficking victim is 7 years. So at that point, like if that's your lifespan, that was your breaking point, and that's the average. So again, I'm very grateful. I'm very blessed in a lot of like being able to sit here with you today, being able to share this, but it is that locking in. And if you can choose to do that every single day, whatever you're focused on, and this is back to psychology, you will naturally start making your way there. If I keep on honing in on her pinstripe suit, eventually I'll be touching her tie, right? It may feel like it's light years away from me, but my mind has to be there, versus a victim mentality. And I'm not talking about victim shaming, that's a whole different thing, but a victim mentality focuses on, I am stuck here. It's like, are you focusing, let's say your finances, to make it very high level, like are you focusing on the fact that you're in debt? Or are you focusing on the opportunities that are going to get you out of debt? My particular thing, without getting too far into the book and story except time, is there was a moment where I had to choose between, am I willing to die in this scenario, or if I'm willing like to die in the scenario because I try to get out and they kill me, right? Or am I willing to die if it means I had an opportunity to get out? That's how deep it had to get for me. And in my mind, I was like, I'd rather die trying than not try. Like, I can't be like this. I know everything in me that's left at that time, and that was my fragmented soul time. It was still more than what my circumstances were showing me. So that is a survivor mentality. And that is what makes you out of victimhood into surviving.
Beautiful.
And if you can get there and then actually find yourself rescued, escaped, now, if you come alongside, any of us, anyone in mental health services, psychotherapy, social work, like that first 3 months becomes critical to make sure that you don't return back to your trafficking, that you don't commit suicide. Like, I'm just being very blunt right now. And that you don't start to exploit someone else. Because the abusers becomes a never-ending cycle, right? So those first 3 months are critical for foundational purposes. And once you get to that 2-year mark after your experience, that's when we have the opportunity to start actually doing some deeper work to get you to that thriving. So there's my little pathway for you.
So, all right, good. So as we close out, you've got several books out there based on what you've just said, right? What you've just talked about and everything before that. Which book should we run out and buy? Because remember now, there's a couple. There's a couple.
The name of that book, because I know you have many.
Well, there are many, but the name of which book? Because there's one that you and I looked at. We said, "Oh, this is the one we think." So, which book are you plugging right now?
Oh my goodness! So, just for everybody, I have 15 books. I just released one called Miami Girl like 2 weeks ago. That teaches you how to live in Miami. But there is a chapter, I bring that up because there's a chapter on how to stay safe in Miami, especially moving to Miami. So that one just came out. All of these are going to be on Amazon. There's 3 others that I would call a trilogy that go into my story, and starting with my victim story, which is Model Stop Traffic, that tells you how this happened, the grooming.
We saw that title. We saw that.
We move into next one. These are 15 years old, guys. So it's Trafficking Aftermath. That was that healing, that 2 years I just told you about of choosing to keep going, because there's a lot of aftermath, right? So for pun, right? For surviving and deciding that you want to build something of your life. And then I have a poetry book, because some things
we saw that. We saw the poetry book.
Like, you can't. Some things you can't put in a narrative. You have to just let your heart and your soul show. And that's Her Wounded Masculine. And there's an entire section on power.
How long after it stopped you wrote your first book?
Ooh, so this is one of those things where someone had to do it. I just wish it would have not been me. Is I wrote my story as insomnia pages, like they were diary entries. And it was because I was having night terrors, and I was having all of this PTSD at the time. I wanted it out of my head. I never wrote a book. Like, I didn't sit down for the first one. Like, now I've written 15, but like some of them intentionally. This one I did not intentionally write, my very first one. So I was still a baby at the time. But Model Stop Traffic started out as dreams and night terrors and feelings, and nonprofits and the FBI and DEA actually, between the reality of my world and what I was remembering through like all the PTSD, they were like sitting with me, not all together, but I had like a psychologist and like come to me and be like, hey, do you want to put that together and make it like your story? And that could be your story. And then different people from nonprofits came along, and they're like, if we come together with you, we can publish this, make a big difference. That's that whole poster child or pioneer back then. And they composed the book for me. They helped me edit it. They helped me publish it. And that was the release.
All right. So she said it. 15 books out there, right? There are definitely some options. Each book deals with some aspects, so whether it's the trafficking, whether it's the healing, whether it's the modeling, the industry, and how this kind of comes about. So we know that you are short on time. You've got someplace you've got. We said that. So we know you've got to get out the door. But Air, we want to thank you. From the bottom of my heart. There are some causes that I'm very, very passionate about. There are a lot of causes that I'm very, very passionate about. There are a couple that I get off my duff and I do something about, whether it's through my labor or monetarily. And this has been something that, in passing, you hear about it. You just hear about it, but you have made this. You've brought this to the forefront for me. And probably my colleague Laura as well, and made it very, very real. Right now I've got more information, and I can't just sit and be silent or sit and not recognize. And I'm okay with being in this space. I'm a military chick, I think I'm bad. So and so I'm okay with being emboldened and just just strong, in this new position, in this space. So we're gonna let Laura kind of chime in, and then we're gonna close out and let you go about your day.
Well, no, I just want to thank you. It is amazing everything that we have talked today, and not just today, but the fact that you have been sharing your story.
Yes.
I mean, like putting a face on it, so we can really identify
putting a face.
and relate. That's so brave, and I'm really grateful for you sharing your story with us. Thank you so much.
I love that, putting a face to it. That's what you've done for us.
7 prominent women that I know across this country. We all look completely different. We're all 15 years out. Like, you'd never know, but it's good in a way to be like, I actually look like this girl, or how on earth could it happen if to this person, right? It's like their education, their looks, their XYZ. So I like that you're like a face to it. Like the 7 faces that come in my mind, you would never know. But I know that there's someone that looks up to them, a mother or a daughter, and like it's like, okay, I need to be sharp on this. I need to pay attention. So
Air Kramer, president of the Brickell Community Chamber. human trafficking thriver. I wouldn't dare say survivor, thriver. Someone that we are definitely proud to be at the table with. We look forward to hearing more about not your story, but about your activism and about your contribution just in this area. If there's any way that AU Studios can, continue to help in awareness or continue to support, please let us know. We're here, right? We're here for you and for the cause. And so with that, I am Dr. Maya Bird Stewart. I'd like to thank my co-host as well, Ms. Laura Rojas, for being in the studio with us. And we couldn't do this, without the man behind the man behind the machine, Angel Vasquez, our production manager. With that being said, this is AU Studios. I am Dr. Maya Bird Stewart, and thank you. We look forward to you tuning in to our next session coming soon.
Let's go.